Hello. I tell you why I will never be famous on YouTube because I'm ornery. I don't follow the rules, and I don't like non-essentials, gimmicky things. So I'm an ordinary Buddha here. See, it's so stupid. All right, so we're gonna talk about healing trauma today. Healing trauma in your life. All right, so first thing, get out of the way. What is trauma? Okay, well, we're going to make it really simple. Trauma is something that happens that shouldn't have happened. Okay, so I'm not talking about like when you go to a restaurant and the waitress brings you the wrong thing. Like, that's not a traumatic event. That shouldn't have happened, maybe, but it was mostly a mistake. Inherently within all of us, there's like, there's a code. Like, we shouldn't harm other people. We shouldn't harm other things. Like, I think that's inherent in us because when somebody harms us, that's something that happens that shouldn't have happened, and we know that it's traumatic for us, right? So, not everything that happens that shouldn't have happened is trauma, but when trauma happens, it is something that shouldn't happen. Abuse shouldn't happen. Um, like murder, killing, stuff like that shouldn't happen, but it happens. Trauma happens all the time. So the first part you got to understand about healing trauma, is that you can't heal trauma. All right, so this requires us to break down trauma, right? We got to break it down. So there's a traumatic event, and then there's the results from that traumatic event. Like, you can't heal the traumatic event. You can't change the traumatic event. That happened. It's over. It's done. Like life is traumatic. But the effects from the traumatic event, that's what you can heal. That's what you can change. That's what you need to work on. And the first step in this is acknowledging that a traumatic event happened in your life. And sometimes we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that because we don't want to relive the pain, and we don't see the reason why. But you have to acknowledge that a traumatic event happened in your life in order to be able to access the effects that were caused as a result from that traumatic event. An example of this, right? An example. This is a really easy example. Somebody's in a car wreck, right? That shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen. But like, the world is traumatic. Our lives revolve around these cars. We put our trusts in these metal boxes, and we cram onto this highway, and we drive it, and we travel it and hurtle through space in these totally unnatural speeds, and like, it's gonna happen. But it shouldn't happen, and there's no way that I can live without a car. There's no way most people in this world can live without a car. But you get in a car wreck and you're driving with your best friend, and your best friend dies. Like, that's something that shouldn't have happened. That's a big trauma, right? That's a big trauma. But you can't change that. Your friend is gone, and you got in that wreck, and you're gonna feel the effects from that traumatic event. You're gonna feel that pain. It's gonna be there. You're gonna have that loss. Your friend is no longer gonna be there, or whatever. And you can't change any of that. You're gonna carry the scars from that traumatic event, but the effects of that traumatic event, you might carry guilt because you might have internalized being the driver in this accident. You might carry guilt for killing your friend. You might say, I killed my friend. And you might carry this guilt. And you might not ever want to drive a car again. And you might not ever want to drive a car with another passenger again. And carrying this guilt and having this aversion towards driving as potential results from this traumatic event, they're not going to serve your life. They're going to totally hold you back from living your life. And so you got to accept that happened. It just happened. Remove yourself from the equation. It happened, and be like, oh yeah, I carry this guilt. I didn't kill my friend. It's what happened. Or maybe you will project anger and hatred onto the other driver. Maybe they were drunk, and your friend died, and you're going to hate them, and you're going to project this anger onto them. That's going to be an effect from that traumatic event. You're going to carry around this hate with you, but you can't change that your friend's gone and you were in this wreck, right? You can't change that. And so you just generate all this hate towards this other person that was drunk or whatever. And like, you're just filling yourself up with hate. It's totally limiting. It's totally debilitating to you carrying on with your life. See, like when we experience traumatic events, which we do all the time in our lives, it splits us. There's a part of us that gets split off from the main part of us. Like I want to live like we all don't like trauma shouldn't happen because we all inherently understand that we deserve peace and joy. Like we deserve to be peaceful and joyful and have like good lives. Like we deserve that. Everybody deserves that. But then these things happen that shouldn't have happened. And they shouldn't have happened because we know that they're disrupting our peace and they're disrupting our joy. But like we need to take responsibility for that in ourselves and correct the effects. See, the effects cause us to split. Like I want to carry on with my life. My friend died, or he's gone from this car wreck. I need to keep living. I'm still alive, but I got all this hate, or I got all this guilt, and I'm afraid, and I got all this fear, to drive. But like that separates. See, that takes you, whoa, so no longer you can go forward because all this other stuff over here is pulling you away from going that direction. So the first step to dealing with trauma is accepting that the traumatic event happened and giving it its proper acknowledgement so you can access the effects of that traumatic event and then start working on the effects of that traumatic event. Start, go to a counselor and understand that it wasn't your fault. There's no reason to carry this guilt. Or, start looking towards God to forgive this drunk driver, and so you don't have to carry around this hate for them, like you got to start looking at those effects and how they're derailing your direction in life, right? So that's what you got to do. And these things happen all the time, and they totally derail us and take I totally lost my train of thought there, but let's see. Well, the train totally left the station there, but I don't really know what else to say, honestly. I mean, I could lay out other examples. I mean, like, look, so abuse, like any type of abuse, like now lying, manipulation, that's abuse of power, right? Where somebody has power over another person in a mental way, but it's still physical, because it has to do with some physical thing, right? But like physical abuse, like that's power over another person, but none of it should happen. So you take a child, right? So children are totally dependent on their caregivers, right? And somebody abuses them. It's all abuse is all abuse of power, but that shouldn't have happened, right? And a child, they'll internalize abuse. Like a child is egocentric because a child, like they are the center of the universe, because a child is learning who he's supposed to be. He doesn't know who he's supposed to be. He doesn't know who he is. That's why he's learning who he's supposed to be. And the human spirit is three things. It's self-esteem, it's self-worth, and it's self-efficacy, right? So if you're a child and you had a good upbringing, wasn't too dysfunctional, wasn't too traumatic, a lot of things didn't happen that shouldn't have, right? You're probably going to have a good sense of self-worth, a good sense of self-esteem, and a good sense of self-efficacy. Like if you were able to learn as a child who you were supposed to be, and it was solid, right? But if somebody abused you as a child, which shouldn't have happened, right? That's a traumatic event. What are the effects of that traumatic event, right? Well, if somebody does something icky to you as a child and you're learning who you're supposed to be, your brain is going to record that traumatic event as icky. And you're learning who you are as a child and who you're supposed to be. And then when you become a teenager, you synthesize all that information into who you are going to be and what you're going to do, right? So you're going to learn that you're icky. That's going to be a huge detriment to your self-worth, your self-esteem, your self-efficacy. Now, those three things are the human spirit in its totality, right? Your human spirit is who you know you are, what you know you deserve, and knowing that you can do it and get it, right? So that's the human spirit. But if you had that event happen to you, this traumatic event, the effects of that traumatic event are going to be a huge toll on your human spirit. Like, and if when we grow up and we're not ever able to look at the effects from that traumatic event has on our life, I mean, we're never going to be able to reverse that course. We can fix and change that. We can't reverse and change the event. Like, that's super important to understand. You have to give it its proper acknowledgement so you can start to understand the effects and how they and what they do to your life. Like, people are worth peace and joy. People are deserving of that. Everybody deserves that and is worthy of attaining that. And anything else is additional, and it's like icing on the cake, right? So say, back to the example, right? I left out a part. You're abused as a child, right? So, okay, well, I was abused as a child. That shouldn't have happened, and I'm going to record that as, oh, I'm icky because this was an icky event. Oh, and so that's going to take a detriment into your spirit, right? But then we'd think, oh, well, a perpetrator. This is where the drama triangle comes into play, right? When things that happen that shouldn't happen, we're going to personify it in the drama triangle: perpetrator, victim, rescuer, right? So if we were abused, we're a victim. We're a survivor of abuse. We are victims, right? And then who was the perpetrator? The abuser. And you think, okay, instantly the mind says, well, somebody in my life who I trusted or who I should have trusted, because when we're children, we're learning trust. From 0 to age 2, we learn trust, right? Somebody who I should have trusted or who, I put my trust in abused me. That's a betrayal of trust. That's the second shouldn't. That's the second trauma that happens. So in addition to feeling icky about ourselves, if we experience some type of trauma as children, we're also gonna feel distrust. We're not gonna trust anybody, and that's the effect of that traumatic event. And if we learn distrust, we're going to, in our lives, we're gonna do icky things, and we're gonna seek out icky people in our lives, and that's gonna return us with more ickiness, more negative consequences, and we're not gonna be reaping those rewards of peace and joy, which is exactly the things we're all deserving of, right? So I can't stress this enough. You have to accept that something happened that has robbed you of your peace and joy, and you have to look at the effects of that event. That's it. That's how you heal trauma. You look at the effects, and then once you look at the effects, and you get somebody who can help you if you're not really good at doing it yet by yourself. You get somebody who's trained, a professional, to help you do it, and then they guide you along, But if you can't trust anybody, I mean, eventually you got to trust, you know, God or yourself or imaginary or yourself, or you just got to, you got to take that leap of faith. I mean, I just don't know. But anyways, okay, well, let's heal the effects from all of our traumatic events, all of the things that shouldn't have happened in this life. And many things shouldn't have happened in this life, and they will continue to happen. They shouldn't, but you know what? This life is traumatic, and that's all there is. I'm sorry. I wish it was better, but I deserve peace and I deserve joy, and so do you. And so let's work to get that for ourselves, and let's give that to others. Okay, thank you for tuning in. Like and subscribe if you did in fact like and subscribe.